Hail, hail, the Celts are here, and what the hell do we care now? We're having a party in the Champions League, and we're back for a flagship podcast here on the Celts are here in the aftermath, in the wake of, I've called the stream history in the making. It feels like there's so many good things going on at the moment. I'm sure we'll be getting stuck into all of that. Of course, I am Quinny, and I'm joined as ever for the podcast by Josh. Josh, good to see you, mate. Hail, hail.
Good to see you, Connie. I think no better time to resurrect the flagship podcast than after a history-making Champions League victory. Celtic terrific last night. I think everyone would agree. So very good to see you and looking forward to tuning it over today.
Yeah, it's been a few weeks since we've had one of these. I think the international break derailed us a little bit. Obviously, you're really busy with the Celtic youth and loan stuff that you're keeping up with, as well as the youth, the young Scottish football stuff that I always forget the name of it. Sorry. So yeah, great to be back together. Great to be back getting in amongst it. And on that note, I just thought, why not crack this open to get us going, Josh? Because I've been listening to a lot of Celtic fan media content over the last 12 hours, as I'm sure you have as well. And one of the things that I was aware of, but it didn't really have that penny drop moment for me, wasn't until I was listening to, it was either Ryan 118 or Celtic Fan TV. It was one of them. But talking about how, if you're under the age of 25, you've never seen this, kind of thing. So let's all drink it in, because we've now got a new table to gander at. But we are sitting nice and pretty in 13th on 7 points, within touching distance of the top 8. Goal difference is the only thing that keeps us out of there for the time being. And, this is how it feels to be Celtic. You know what I mean? Anyone comes to paradise. And again, thanks again to all the great media content I've been listening to. But if you think about it now, we've beat Leipzig at home. We beat Bratislava at home. The last home game we had before that was Feyenoord. And then the other 2 home games we had in the last campaign, Lazio was a tight one, but we drew with Madrid. So Fortress Paradise is it's almost back.
It's slowly but surely coming back. I was actually saying that to my dad when I was coming out of the game last night, that's 4 Champions League games now where Celtic are undefeated, 1-3, drew 1. So it's a positive record. And I think you can see the improvements from last season in the game last night. For example, 2-1 up at half-time. Celtic of last season would have likely probably faltered, and Celtic in the last couple of seasons in the Champions League would have probably collapsed and drew or lost that game. But they went on, they got the third goal, and there was really no anxiety after that third goal. With 18 minutes to go, you were thinking that this is going to be comfortable. Celtic are going to see this out, and you had a confidence in the team in Europe that perhaps hasn't been there in the past couple of years. So on the qualification, things are looking good. They're looking up at the minute. But as the manager said last night when he was live on the radio, they're just taking it game by game. They're not even looking at the top 8 at the minute. The target is to get into the last 16 playoffs, and once that's secured, then you can perhaps look forward to the top 8 and see if that's a possibility.
And there's tons of stuff off the back of that. I'm sure we'll be able to get our teeth stuck into with the upcoming international break, as well as everything else that's going to follow on, because it does feel like we're delivering on promise finally. Like this progression that we've all been kind of strung along with for the last couple of seasons under Postecoglou, and then the return of Brendan. We've all been kind of scratching our head, going like, is there progression? Are we any better? Is the team stronger now that we've sold this guy and bought that guy, or bought those 5 guys for £1 million each, or whatever it might be? But I've not done the background on it yet, so forgive me, but that must be the thick end of 10, 12 Champions League appearances for the majority of the squad now. The Postecoglou generation of the Hitates and Maedas, etc. Alistair Johnson must be up there as well. And it looked like a Champions League team, I was saying this with the Atalanta game, where it felt like the first time probably ever, really, where we're in a Champions League game and we really look like shoulder to shoulder, man for man of the level. Normally the way Europa League feels, in a way, but Champions League it normally feels a wee bit above. But last night, we looked the part, where we're man for man, and that progression, the knocks they've taken in the past, the crap goals against the run of play, the stupid refereeing decisions that unwind the momentum. We just stayed cool, calm, and composed, and I felt like a lot of those more experienced players were the ones, and I know Kuhn gets the headlines, rightly so, but it feels like a lot of those players were the ones that really, drove the team.
Yeah, definitely. Even when Celtic went 1-0 down, Baumgartner opens the scoring for Leipzig. There was a 10-15 minute period of uneasiness, I would say, in the ground. Leipzig continued to make chances, manufacture opportunities, and Willie Orban had a header fly by the post. If it went to 2-0, it's probably game over. But Celtic kept their head, like you say, the experienced players, the experienced heads in that team. Your Alistair Johnsons, your Cal McGregors of this world, Kasper Schmeichel, Cameron Carter-Vickers at the back. They kept calm, and Celtic went forward, went on to get the goal that kind of lifted things. And the second goal came at the perfect time. you can't score at a better time than just before half time to put your team ahead. So yeah, the progression of this team is really nice to see, because previous European campaigns you've faltered and conceded last minute goals and not really got the rub of the green. I think that's a big thing as well. That Orban that flies past the post, a wee bit of luck with that. And even we've seen it in Atalanta as well, getting a wee bit of luck. Bratislava, Dortmund, everything fell against Celtic, but now it's fallen in their favour. But to get that, you also need to put in the performance, and they done that last night. A lot of standout players, and it was great to see. Like last season, and you talk about progression, it's clear to see in the numbers. From 6 Champions League games last season, Celtic had 4 points. We're now only 4 games into this season's Champions League, and they have 7 points. So that's almost double the points tally in just under half the games, just over half the games. So it's brilliant to see, and the progression is clear.
Yeah, it's a great time to be cheering the hoops on, especially in the Champions League, for sure. I think one of maybe the unsung heroes, and I don't think there is an unsung hero really from last night, but one of the ones that's maybe not getting too much of the headlines right now, just on that note of the Orban stuff or whatever, is Kasper Schmeichel. Because last night, like the moments that he had in this game, for me, Craig Gordon, Joe Hart, anyone but Fraser Foster or Arthur Boric really probably let us down a little bit in that game. You know, some of the saves Schmeichel made were top tier, you know, no, make no mistake about it. Never mind his actual play on the ball, where Joe Hart was fantastic in commentary and got a lot of praise, obviously, for a lot of the stuff he was sharing with us. But that insight he was given for the goalkeeper's pass selection, when to go long, when to play short, like, it was so cool, calm and composed, but he could also execute it. Because although Joe Hart can identify that, and Joe Hart tries that stuff, but whenever Joe Hart tried to go long to relieve pressure, it normally went out for a throw-in, sadly. So having someone that could actually, you know, release the team, you know, both sides of the game, I thought Kasper was, you know, top marks.
Yeah, a brilliant birthday for him. He turned 38 yesterday, so he couldn't have marked it in a better way. Joe Hart, Schmeichel's an upgrade on him. I think everyone's already admitted that. Credit to Hart, he was brilliant on commentary, and he has been a refreshing voice on commentary in the past couple of games for Celtic in the Champions League. But yeah, Schmeichel, particularly that save in the second half where it comes into the back post. I think it's Sesko that rises above his man at the back stick and heads into the near post, and it's a terrific one-handed save from Schmeichel down to his bottom left. Done very well. One in the first half as well. He didn't have many to make, to be honest, but when he had to be called into action, he was there, and that's the mark of an elite goalkeeper, that they can make those saves at the drop of a hat without really facing in a lot of pressure. And like you say, on the ball, he's different gravy compared to the goalkeepers Celtic fans have been used to in the past 5-10 years. Like you say, Craig Gordon's was an undoing in Europe a lot of times. Joe Hart, I remember away at Leipzig under Ange Postecoglou, Joe Hart saved a penalty and then 2 seconds later tried to play it from the back and gave the ball away to Andre Silva. So you're not getting that type of stuff from Kasper Schmeichel. These stupid mistakes, just as a whole in the team, seem to be eradicated now. We're so used to seeing Celtic away from home in Europe and in Europe and home concede these stupid goals, last-minute goals, penalty kicks. It seems to be eradicated now. But Schmeichel, another, like you say, somewhat of an unsung hero from last night. And the bit of business to get him in on a free transfers is terrific. I don't know if he's going to sign that 1-year extension at the end of the campaign, but he's been a really, really good addition to this Celtic team, both in terms of his ability and the experience he has in the dressing room.
I'd be surprised if he didn't. You know, he's eyeing up that World Cup in America, isn't he? And
yeah, that's true.
You know, like we are fully like, and again, this is something I was going to maybe touch on with the reaction video. I'll do, or maybe something else on the channel. But like this Champions League format, I'm seeing everyone saying how much it suits us and all the rest of it. But whenever I look at this Champions League format and see the success we're starting to yield from it, it's not going to be long before Peter Lawwell's due a lot of apologies for, you know, a lot of the stuff he's been up to for the last few years, keeping the books tight, making sure he's in all these meetings with all these elite, you know, European committees and you know all the rest of it. So because this is what we've been waiting for. We've been waiting for something, not just Scotland, where we can be like a European powerhouse, where we can get more money, where we can actually attract better players in this system, this structure. It's you know, we were worried in the transfer window, I think, weren't we, coming out of it, with the money we'd spent on like less players than what we did before, that were we going to be ready for this competition, you know? But quite clearly, you know, the fixtures, you know, we've been through the hardest segment of it, but you know, the fixture list itself is, I think starting with the win is always nice, but we've definitely, there's only one Peter Lawwell. I don't know if we're going to get that chanted around Parkhead anytime soon, but I definitely think there might be a few detractors that maybe, you know, and again, who knows, all the stuff that goes behind closed doors, how much of a say he's had, and a lot of this stuff. I certainly feel that's been a big part of his job since he's been there with all the boards he's on and stuff like that. But no, 100%. It feels like, with Schmeichel there at the back, and then even the defense as well, like, because Alistair Johnson is going from strength to strength and is looking more and more like a captain, leader, legend kind of defender we've got at the back.
Very good.
Vickers and Trusty, of course, the American wall that is. And then Taylor, the surprise start coming in at left back. The defence, like with Sesko, Openda, even Silva and Poulsen coming on towards the end. Like, there was a few gaffes, a wee bit, maybe a missed touch, an awkward pass, but none of them felt out their depth, really.
Yeah, I thought Austin Trusty was particularly outstanding last night, and he's grew into that left-sided centre-back role. And I know you probably won't like to hear it, Quinny, based on your Liam Scales fandom, but I think he's been an upgrade on him the past couple of games that he started alongside Carter Vickers. I don't know if people would agree with that, but I thought he was outstanding last night. Alistair Johnson too, like you say, he's a real leader in that Celtic squad, wearing the captain's armband on several occasions, scoring goals now. He's added that side to his game, which is great, and Carter Vickers just a rock as ever. To be fair to Scales, he comes on for Carter Vickers with 20 minutes to go, and done himself proud. You didn't really notice a real difference at the back. Same with when Alex Valle came on for Greg Taylor. He didn't notice much of a difference. Yes, Valle got undone at the back post maybe a couple of times, and he was left in a 2-on-1 situation, but going forward, he adds so much to Celtic's game. And Taylor, yes, I was surprised to see him start, but he does well. He sets up the second goal, a really nice ball into the box for Kuhn, and he's decent on the ball. As much as Celtic fans don't, and a lot of fans don't rate him, and people are probably disappointed to see him start last night. I thought he coped well at the level. For a player who has probably been Celtic's undoing a lot of times in Europe in the past and been the supposed weak link in the team, he was decent last night. So the defence deserve a lot of plaudits. They limited RB Leipzig to very few opportunities, but as the manager says, your defensive stability builds from the front. And I think the pressing in Celtic's game last night was elite, of an elite level. I was listening to Pat Nevin on Radio Scotland after the game. He said it was world class, and I think that's very difficult to disagree with. You look at the second goal, the way Celtic hounded RB Leipzig into that corner from an RB Leipzig goal kick in the 45th minute. Celtic managed to score and put themselves 2-1 up. So they deserve a lot of credit for that. But going back to the defence for again, sidetrack, very good. And they were probably unlucky not to keep a clean sheet, to be honest. If they defended a corner and a set piece a bit better, they'd have been coming away with a clean sheet and a second clean sheet in a row in the Champions League.
Yeah, very, very close to it. I think Taylor, I put a tweet out when the lineup came out. Like, I said this before Atalanta, that Taylor's kind of earned playing a Champions League game against a top opponent to see, has he progressed? Has he made that step up? Can he make that step up, of course? Because every year so far we've seen that, this is maybe his level where he does hit that glass ceiling. He maybe does get caught out. He maybe does leave us with something wanting for it. But I thought, this was it. You give him the chance, because I think before he got injured and before Valle became flavour of the month, I was on here saying Taylor's on track to have his best season in the hoops. He looks like earlier this season, he'd been amazing, so, and for me, I think McGregor's a big part of it as well, but I think Taylor was part of the what's the word I'm thinking of?
The leadership, the core leadership group, would you say?
I know, it felt like, the shape that we had. I seen this very well with the B team. We were just talking about this before coming on. Again, stay tuned to the channel for the B team video that will come out. But Leipzig do the 4-2-2 thing, right? And, Red Bull football, energy drink soccer, as they call it in America. We all know how that kind of works and plays. But the way Taylor comes into inverted fullback in there, it really just felt like we had them in, I don't know what the word is, hammerlock. It was definitely a chokehold. Yeah, it felt like we just got them rear naked choke style, and with proper, they had nowhere to exploit. There was nowhere on the pitch where, down that side we're getting all the joy, or on that guy we've got him every time. And a big part of that for me, I felt, was Taylor walking in there. Because when Tati's forward pressing and then everyone else in the midfield that we'll talk about in a second, it just felt like a bit of a masterstroke, from the manager to play him, and from Taylor to, not be knocked by, maybe missing out in some minutes, and maybe, the level of competition coming his way. But I thought Taylor was kind of like the skeleton key to the system working, because it was quite, I've heard some people say as well, Josh, I don't know what your feelings are, before the first goal goes in or just after they go 1-0 up, that we lost control of the game or we didn't look too good. And yeah, there's maybe some of that too. But I really don't think there was any periods of this game where we looked like below them. If you
Yeah,
know
I
what I
think
mean?
there was a 10-15 minute period where Leipzig they had some chances, and because they scored the goal from the corner, they got a series of corners after it, and naturally the fans became a bit uneasy. I was myself in the ground, and that's the only real period they had though. And even at that, although they were a bit ahead, but Celtic just rallied after it. To be honest, and that was the only real spell Leipzig had. Even in the second half, when they were a goal behind, Celtic were pushing for the third. It wasn't Leipzig pushing for an equaliser. Celtic had several chances to go 3-1 up before Hatate eventually broke the deadlock. I'm sure he's someone we'll go into in a minute. But yeah, Leipzig, they didn't really do much for me. I was going into the game, I was a bit fearful because although they lost every single game in the Champions League, it was by 1 goal. And it was to teams like Juventus, Atletico Madrid, Liverpool, big sides. So you knew they were going to eventually click into gear at some point, but they never really showed any signs of doing that last night. Marco Rosa team, they didn't muster much.
Yeah. I don't mind giving myself a wee pat in the back at this stage. I did my prediction on the channel and I said we're going to win the game 3-2. I don't know if I was the only. It feels like the only kind of YouTube prediction out there with a win. So I was quite glad to see that. And part of the reason I had, like, if you go back and watch the video, if any of you care to, maybe seen it when it came out, I had the game down as a draw, but seeing I was actually like fleshing the teams out, they didn't have that much pace to bring to the table. They didn't have an X factor player, like playmaker in the middle of the pitch to really do something. And that is really what we've seen on the day. Like they were fine, they were good, they were big and strong, they were calm and composed, but they didn't have any X factor. You know, they didn't have anything that puts that fear into you.
Yeah, they missed Xavi Simons, I think, in the middle of the park, the pace and kind of creativity that he would have brought in. But for the team they are, second in the Bundesliga, we can't take anything away from Celtic's result. You know, this team are best defence in the Bundesliga, only 3 points behind Bayern Munich at the top of the table. So they are an elite European side and flying in Germany, although they were beat off Borussia Dortmund at the weekend. So take nothing away from this Celtic performance. It was a dominant win, comfortable win, I may add, against an elite European team who are flying in one of the top 5 leagues in this continent, which, to be honest, Celtic deserve a lot of credit for. So many times in the past, you've seen Celtic come up against these big teams, likes of Milan, Barcelona, and it's somewhat of a smash and grab. That wasn't a smash and grab last night. That was like a domestic game. The way Celtic played that, the dominance on the ball, the elite level of pressing, and the goals they scored were terrific. It was like a domestic game where they were comfortable. It wasn't like they were facing an elite European team, but they were, and the way they imposed themselves on the game, Celtic really showed that they can compete at this level against teams like RB Leipzig.
And again, there's a great stat in here that keeps coming up, and like I'm all for it. We're here to have a good time and all that stuff, right? But it's not totally accurate, and it's the whole Leipzig have only conceded 5 goals. Yes, they've conceded 5 goals in the Bundesliga, but in the Champions League, before we played them, they'd conceded 6. They've now conceded 9. So it's a nice stat. It does kind of fit, but it's kind of like politician speak, isn't it? You know, you're taking a statistic that's kind of true and making it fit a narrative, you know, if you get me. So, like, yeah, it's great, and I'm not trying to diminish it in any way, but, you know, that's just in the Bundesliga. That's not all comps, you know. But, yeah, and the midfield for me the midfield is always when I've got my kind of focus. It's just the area, the pitch, the area of football I kind of enjoy watching or, you know, like to track the most. And the biggest thing I was crying out for in this game, and again, you can go back and check the preview, was to have McGregor in this developed role that we've seen over the last couple of games with Atalanta, Motherwell, and Dundee, where it's normally been McKeown and Bernardo, or McKeown, Engels, Bernardo's been a few combinations of them. But McGregor, for me, like, that was the best European performance I think we've seen from him. He literally done everything that you would want. He wasn't anchored into that metronome position in the middle of everything, in the middle of the spider's web. Some of the best bits of play in this game came from McGregor, either pressing them, you know, in support of Hatate in the front 3, or breaking the ball out with a bit of a crowd and carrying it 10, 15 yards over the halfway line. And we've not seen that from McGregor under Rodgers until like now, because he's been in that deeper role. And when we're asking Engels to be higher and wider, or formerly O'Reilly, and, you know, the jobs that we've seen Hatate and McKeown do. So I really think, like, the captain, again, maybe, I don't know if I'd say unsung hero, but I do think, like, I'm hearing people say if it wasn't Kuhn, it'd be Hatate for man of the match. For me, if it wasn't Kuhn, it'd be McGregor. Like, McGregor was like the be all and end all of everything that made that team work today, you know, from decision making on when to go forward. And even with pulling Engels in and, other bits and pieces that went throughout this game, I thought McGregor was the leader that we've all seen him to be.
Yeah, definitely took the game by the scruff of the neck, and so many times in Europe, McGregor's been exposed, I would feel, and the deep lying role in that midfield. I think that was apparent even at Dortmund away. But now, listen, last night, even in the first 15 minutes, you could tell he was taking that game by the scruff of the neck and putting in a true captain's performance. There was one instance, it might have been in the lead up to the Hatate goal, actually, in the second half, where Cal McGregor gets the ball deep inside the Celtic half near the 18-yard box, and he looks to drive forward or play a pass, but the lane doesn't open, or Bernardo makes the wrong run, and McGregor just he's going forward with the ball, and eventually turns back to go into the right back position towards the corner flag, and he has about 3 or 4 RB Leipzig players chasing him. He just completely fools them all and plays a lovely reverse pass back inside to one of the centre backs. That was one of his standout moments for me, and yeah, so good, Cal McGregor last night. We've been waiting for him, really, to be honest, as a Celtic captain, as a Celtic player, to be involved in one of these nights in Europe. And last night he stepped up to the plate, stepped up to the mark fully. And he's 31 now. He's getting on in age, but his performances aren't dropping. He's been terrific this season. I would argue he's up there for player of the season so far. He was in fine goal scoring form at the start of the campaign. And like you say, the last couple of games, especially in Europe against Atalanta, RB Leipzig, he's really moulded into that kind of dynamic midfield role and done so well. And I'm so pleased for him as well, because he was, as a boy, there was pictures of him as a ball boy in these European nights celebrating these victories, and for him to finally be involved in one is brilliant for him.
Yeah, totally. And I thought like he was a mad standout. Engels did great as well in moments. Of course, a nice assist down the line for Kuhn, which was brilliant. And then that move you mentioned with McGregor sets up the third goal. He retreats, recovers possession, and then within a couple of touches, we're up the pitch, and it eventually finds its way to Tate, which was lovely. And I'm with you, Squeak 1888. I'm not trying to rain on parades or diminish it or anything. I'm just it's been bugging me. It's like so I thought I would make mention of it. But yeah, I thought McGregor was a huge standout. I thought Engels did his part as well, to really show that the player he is. And I felt that there was a lot of disappointment around Engels after the Dortmund game, because we're thinking, we've got a Bundesliga player. He should not look out of his depth here, and he should be one of the guys that keeps us in the game, for us knowing it was going to be an uphill battle, as it were. And that didn't really happen against Dortmund, but we've very much got like a top-end Bundesliga player performance from him, as it were, last night. And I think he'll come out of this game all the better for it as well.
Yeah, definitely. I was impressed by Arne Engels. I think when you sign an £11 million player, especially a guy who's replacing Matt O'Reilly, fans are expecting goals and assists every week, and, well, particularly goals. Arne Engels has only scored 3, and they've all been penalties. Now, for me, I think a player like Arne Engels, or a box-to-box midfielder, is quite hard to judge sometimes on performances, and a lot of fans just jump on the numbers, the goals, and because he's not got a lot of them, he's faced a bit of criticism. But when you look at a performance like last night, he was key in the midfield. He was key again in the midfield at the weekend against Aberdeen, and the running power he shows to get from box to box is really terrific. He's powerful, he's dynamic, he's physical in the midfield, and he's everything you want in a central midfield player, a dynamic 8, when you're playing in the UEFA Champions League. So yeah, he had some really nice touches to kind of open up the play in the right-hand side for Nicolas Kuhn, especially for the goal. And there was an instance in the second half as well where he ate up about 30-40 yards of grass and won Celtic a free kick high up the pitch. So yeah, yet again impressed by Arne Engels. He's growing into Celtic's midfield and establishing himself as a first choice starter. 21 years of age, he's only going to get better. He's only going to improve, and at this level, he's a key performer for Celtic. But as well, I thought Rio Hatate last night was excellent. Quinny, what about you?
Hatate does come out of the midfield as the star performer, because he was the one that was just making stuff happen. He was just, and again, the thing with Hatate as well, that again, there's lots of detractors in the Celtic fan base, or the Celtic community or whatever, where it's like, is he any good? What does he actually offer? Bernardo's better than him. But what you see in these games is like he does just get in amongst it, and he's just brave to make something happen. A few of the passes didn't quite come off, like that ball that he's zung, up the line for I forget who it was now. I've been watching the highlights on repeat all morning. I might even be getting confused with Kuhn's play for. Yeah, I think I am.
Yeah.
Think about
It's,
Kuhn's pass for Maeda, which was sublime, by the way.
yeah. Speaking of one of the ones from Hatate, in the second half, he gets the ball just outside the 18-yard box, nutmegs, I think it's Nicolas Seyvalt from Leipzig, drives forward and plays an unbelievable line-splitting pass for Kyogo, who latches onto the ball. If that square pass from Kyogo finds Daizen Maeda and Maeda scores, that is getting goal of the league phase in the Champions League. That was absolutely incredible. Hatate really stepped up to the mark last night. When you see even the pass he played in for Taylor in the lead up to the second goal, he didn't even look. It's a no-look pass that Taylor makes the run, and Hatate's just like that, plays the pass. Absolutely terrific from him. So yeah, I thought he really stepped up to the mark. Gets the goal as well, and you could see how much the goal meant to him. Running away in celebration behind that goal, really passionate about it. And he spoke about really consistently performing for Celtic when he's been away with the Japan team and not getting any minutes, just being on the bench for the whole international break. And I think over this last block of games, he's really stepped up to the mark. Terrific. Arguably man of the match in the semi-final against Aberdeen at the weekend, aside from the Maeda hat-trick. And then last night, aside from 2 Nicholas Kuhn goals, him or McGregor could have won man of the match. So really great to see for Rio Hatate. And he's another one of that kind of generation of Postecoglou signings, guys like Kyogo, Maeda, Carter Vickers, who are didn't really have a night like this or last night, and they stepped up to the mark. I was so impressed by him. He's a maestro in that midfield, isn't he?
Yeah, big time. And it feels like, when he scores that goal, you just see the absolute relief and joy and everything just pouring out of him, because this is like his third Champions League campaign, and he's had some plaudits and had some stuff and all the rest of it, but he's not had that goal. And the thing, like you say, with Japan, like Japan have got a great generation at the moment, and he'll have a lot of pals that are playing in the Premier League, scoring goals in the Champions League and all the rest of it. And he's maybe being the kind of odd one out a little bit, where he's not had that, like, obviously he's winning titles and stuff with us, which maybe some of these guys aren't, but like that top end, like headline making performance across European and world football or whatever. So you just really seen the passion and the joy for him. And another game where he clocked 90 minutes. I think we've had 2 of them now in the last week, which is something that we've not really seen much from Hatate over the last few years. He's been regularly a 67-minute effort. So I think that was absolutely fantastic. I just want to say quickly, but we are doing this live for the first time ever, and we've got over 100 of you already on YouTube. So thanks very much. A couple of you on Facebook as well. If you do enjoy listening to this, me and Josh doing it live, the only way you're going to let us know that is by hitting the like button wherever you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook or whatever. If we get enough likes on this, we'll maybe do it a bit more regular on the live rather than doing it recorded and posting it later. So if you enjoy it being live, you want to get involved in the live chat as well, do that. Let us know your thoughts and feelings. Who was your standouts? Was it a letdown for you or anything like that? I doubt it, but any thoughts and feelings, get them in the live chat. Hit the like button as well. And if we get enough likes, I don't know, we're at 110. What's the magic number? 67 or 88? If we get to one of them, then maybe we'll do next week's live as well. But yeah, smash that like button, support the cause. And when Bernardo comes on for Engels, I was quite surprised at that, because that normally would have felt like a Hatate move, and then you just shore up the team and don't make any mistakes or whatever. But we keep Hatate on. We do Engels for Bernardo, which is the move to make. Those two guys are the most similar in the midfield, physically, technically, tactically. And I thought Bernardo was great when he came on. It really opened them up quite quickly as well, with a nice ball down the left-hand channel. And like, I was so glad that we kept that on, because part of the submission move that we put Leipzig in was with the pressing power of Hatate with the front three. And it's normally that kind of thing where you do recoil when you do, like, let's not lose now. That's normally when the next goal goes in, and then everything gets a bit nervy from there. So I thought that was, along with a catalogue of other things, but I thought that was a masterstroke from the manager to keep what was working.
Yeah, he trusted Paulo Bernardo last season in the Champions League. Brendan Rodgers starting him in a lot of the games, and threw him in last night, and he's going to perform. The boy's only 20, 22, 23 now, and he's adept at that level. Like you say, it was the like-for-like replacement for Arne Engels. The running power he brings, the dynamism he has on the ball, his physicality. He's a very good player, Paulo Bernardo, and impressed by him when he came on, as always, to be honest. A couple of nice passes, a couple of nice moves. Linked up well with Alex Valle on that left-hand side, even though I do get mixed up with them sometimes on the pitch, because they do look quite similar. I don't know if it's the Portuguese kind of Spanish relation, but they were both substitutes, to be honest. Bernardo and Alex Valle were good. One substitute I do want to single out, now maybe people can let me know in the comments, but I thought Yang Hyun-jun was very good when he came on. he was involved in some very nice series of play, and that volley, he had a very nice sequence on the right hand side and involving Nicholas Kuhn, and it may have been Bernardo actually, and then he eventually gets laid off for the shot and it flies just over the crossbar. I still think there is a player in Yang at 22. He's had a year in a foreign country, a land where he'd never been before in his life, coming over at such a young age. And he was okay in his first year, never really showed anything, but he always showed glimpses of what he can do. And last night, it said a lot that Rodgers brought him on over Forest and Palma, and I thought he had a decent cameo. Quinny, what did you think about him?
I was really glad to see him get that cameo and do what he did in the game, because like we've often said on this channel, like what Palma doesn't have is really hard to give him, but what Yang doesn't have, he can get that, you know, like, you know, it's a bit of composure, it's a bit of technique, but his pace, his desire to be direct, his dribbling ability, you know, like that's great. He just needs a little bit more, and that game will do him the world of good. Although he didn't come out of it with a goal or an assist or anything like that, he really contributed to everything that we were trying to do. And I don't think I said this at the weekend, but when Forrest came on against Aberdeen, he did absolutely nothing, you know. And I think when Forrest even came on for Yang in the Dundee match, we didn't really get anything on that side of the pitch from Forrest. And Yang in the Dundee game didn't get a kick of the ball first half because everything was going to Palma all first half. And then Yang got a bit of a spell, 10 minutes in the second half before getting subbed off, and he looked like nippy, got an assist, or didn't get the assist technically because it came off a defender, but made the goal happen. So, yeah, I was really pleased to see him get that. I think it'll do his confidence the world of good. And for the fourth choice winger or whatever, like I say, what he's not got, he can get. You know, some people have said get him out on loan. That would probably solve the problem a little bit, of course, if he just got more reps, more minutes or whatever. But it feels like you heard the comments again from Joe Hart saying like he's got more trust, and I forget what the exact words were that Joe Hart was giving out, but it did make you think that last year there was a worry that if you put him on, he could get sent off or he could just make a gaff of it or do something like that. And Joe Hart's words were something like he's got that trust now. It was something to that tune. If anyone remembers in the live chat, feel free to let me know. And you could feel that, you know, like that quick passage of play on the right hand side where everyone was like bouncing about like a ping pong ball, you know, pass, and then you know, Yang do something, and then he gets away and takes that shot. And imagine that went in. It would just
the roof would have come off Celtic Park if that goal went in to put Celtic 4-1 up. Especially a player like Yang, you always get a sense of like, oh my goodness, if a player like him does something like that, if you know what I mean. So I was very impressed by him in his cameo. A bit surprised when I saw him coming on instead of Forrest. I think that pace, that directness, that ability to dribble with the ball and play nice 1-2s is what probably saw him come on. And like perhaps Joe was pointing towards in commentary, that it does show Brendan Rodgers' faith in him, that he's willing to put him on in a Champions League game of that magnitude when Celtic were, I don't know if they were 2-1 up or 3-1 up when Yang came on. I need to double check that, but nonetheless, it shows the faith and the trust Rodgers has in him that he was willing to throw him in.
Yeah. And I think just before we get to the front three that started the game, there's another bit of chat in the live chat about another substitution who you've already mentioned, of course, Alex Valley. People are saying sign him up and all the rest of it, and maybe the press are trying to wind us up saying that he's going back to Barca in January or all the rest of it. I can't imagine he doesn't want to stay, but maybe he doesn't. I don't know. But...
yeah, I think the report was from a Spanish outlet. That's where it originated from, saying that Laporta and Flick perhaps want to bring him back in January. They'll give Celtic a compensation fee if they do cut the loan short, which would be a bit disappointing, but Celtic will need to look to other areas if he does go in January. He's been a good performer so far, to be honest. I've been impressed by him. I think his running style and kind of way he gets down that left-hand side reminds me a bit of Kieran Tierney at times. I was surprised to see him drop out last night, as I touched on earlier, but yeah, he's been a good player so far, and if the opportunity was there to sign him up permanently, I think it's a deal Celtic should look to do, but I don't know if that loan's going to be cut short, and it'd be quite disappointing if it did.
It does then put the Taylor contract situation back into focus.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he's only got, his deal expires at the end of the current season, and there's been no chat, nothing, zilch about a new deal for him in the papers or anywhere. So, yeah, he's probably one you want to sign up if Vi eventually departs and the loan is cut short. Taylor's the situation, it sheds that more into light and puts that into focus.
Yeah, I'd maybe give Taylor another year or two after last night, you know, but there's still a wee bit to go. But it's we're maybe back to square one. The left backs come January, you know, so watch out for that one. I do think with him having a buyout of 3 million, my hunch was we'd sell Bernabei for whatever we're going to get for him, and then just phone up Barca and say, "Here's your money. We're keeping this one." But
yeah, that's true.
But maybe not. The front three is really what won the game for us. In particular, Nicholas, of course, Messi regen. And again, there was a great tweet that went out last night. That's the closest thing to Messi we've seen at Celtic Park since Messi. So.
Nicholas Kuhn was incredible in his performance. I thought he took a while to grow into the game, but when he eventually did, wow, he made such an impact. That first goal was a thing of beauty. It wasn't even like a whipped shot. It was more like a chip or a dink into that far corner. It was terrific. And then box crashing goal for the second, rattling that in at the back post with utmost power. And like you say, when he cuts inside from that right wing, there is nothing defenders can do. We've seen it at Ross County when he scored the last minute winner. He just loves getting that ball on his left foot and making a nuisance of himself for defenders. So yeah, he thoroughly deserved that last night. The German press were writing about him, saying he was a no-name in Germany, obviously, because no one's really aware of him. But I think last night's performance against the German team will have put him well on the map in his homeland. I think it's Nagelsmann in charge of Germany. He's never really afraid to give some kind of unorthodox players call-ups. Maybe if Kuhn keeps up his form, he could be one who gets in there at some point. But yeah, last night's performance on the big stage against an elite team will have done him absolutely no harm, and I'm sure he'll be buzzing with that. As much as he doesn't show it, because I think he's a very cool and composed figure. Even with that first goal, he didn't really celebrate it that much. He was more of a kind of ice cold guy. So but look at the improvement in him from January when he signed for Celtic. He had that teeth operation, kept him out for a while. Had some teeth removed, and now he's just a different animal this season. I think 19 goal contributions in all competitions, and we're only in November. Incredible.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. And I thought like the way he didn't really overly go mental on celebrating the first goal. Maybe I was a wee bit surprised it did get in past the goalkeeper. Like it was a great shot. It was a shot. He's obviously taking it trying to score, but I think there's a wee bit of it went in. Like there's a wee bit of that. But the second goal, he's giving it all that.
He's loving it.
He knows he's buried it. He knows he's hit the back of the net on that one for sure, and he was not holding back. And you're just like, yes, that's what we want to see, wee man. Like, pour it out there, give us it, and right before the stroke of half time as well, because the game state in these matches can be where it's won and lost. You know, going 1-0 down. If we go into half time at 1-0 down, it's then really hard to imagine a lot of the tempo that we did see in this game. So quickly to fight back, and right after we went 1-0 down. This was quite fresh in my memory because I'm doing the preview on the channel. But if you remember the last time we played Leipzig, Kieran Tierney opens the scoring. We go 1-0 up. And then I forget when they equalise. I think it might have been the second half. They equalise. And then immediately from kickoff, 2 or 3 passes, we get up the pitch and Eddie gets us back in front. So as soon as that goal went in, I was just like, we need to embody the spirit of Odsonne Edouard here. We need to somehow just get back up the pitch and just get them cold right after they've scored. And to get the whole point of me going on this little rant is getting that second goal right before half time for me wasn't quite final nail in the coffin, but it was 2 hands on the steering wheel.
It was crucial.
You know? Yeah,
absolutely crucial. You heard the roar from the Celtic fans at half time as the half time whistle went, because I think Leipzig had just kicked it from the start and they blew the half time whistle. So that would have gave the players an almighty boost going in at half time, and you could see the Leipzig players at the break there. Their heads were down. They were leading 1-0 and they kind of chucked it away. So, yeah, that was crucial. Timings at this level, particularly, are absolutely massive. And for Celtic last night, they were spot on. Even the third goal was scored at the perfect time. Not too early in the second half, where it could have become a situation where you sit back for the last half hour. But it was scored with 18 minutes to go, where it kind of killed the game. As much as fans in the back of their head would have had a wee bit of anxiety, it was never really... Leipzig were never going to really recover. I remember thinking to myself and saying this to people who were sitting around me with 10 minutes to go, I was thinking, Leipzig have chucked it here. They know they're not getting back into this. And I think the results previously for them in the Champions League meant they knew they had to win last night, and at 2 goals down, they were just like, oh, what's the point? We're out now. There's no point in trying to get back into this game. And they chucked it, I think. But full credit to Celtic, and like you say, the timings of the goals were crucial. And to be honest, it could have been more than 3-1. It could have been 4 or 5 if Celtic took their chances.
Tyson Maeda's shot from the edge of the box. You're just willing him to take a second. take a touch first, wee man, and then sit the keeper down.
Or even just take it first time and lob it over Peter Galassi. I think that was perhaps an option as well.
Do you think he's got the techers for a lob?
I don't know if that's true. If it fell to Kyogo, it probably ends up in the back of the net.
Yeah, perhaps. We've got a wee bit of chat as well asking about the B team. The second goal, or the non-Cummings goal, was announced in the stadium as an OG. It was a ball down the right, crossed in from the byline, and I couldn't really make out who did get the final touch on it.
It was on Twitter. It was given to Francis Turley, that goal.
Yeah, the announcer in the stadium said OG. Maybe it was Turley, but I've got no idea. It wasn't DD anyway, because he smashed the ball in from the right. So unless it's one of those ones, so just thought I'd add that in. And yeah, Dyson, like, he could have scored one or two in this game. Obviously, the great dummy for the second goal. Like, honestly, like, he must be so thankful that couldn't stand in there, because like, we're talking about game state. We go in at halftime at 1 each. If nobody's behind him, he fresh airs that. Never mind the chance he mentioned.
You're screaming if he does that.
Yeah, big time. But I think, like, what we got out of Dyson in this game was much more of that off the ball, energy, physical athlete stuff. We didn't really see too much from him in terms of really, like, that Gerdrida did a really good job in marking him last year for Feyenoord. He's a bit of a muscle, he's a bit of a unit. And yeah, he was a bit worried to go forward and stuff like that. And I think that was maybe a nice kind of nullifying action. But Dyson, maybe alongside Kyogo, I beg your pardon, it was just much more the energy and the threat of these guys. It really then gave the space for, like, Taylor to pop up, Hatate to roam into the box, Kuhn to come in on the outside. And, it does feel that there was a moment in the second half where Kuhn's breaking away. We've won the ball, and he then gets fouled close to the halfway line. And you can see when he gets fouled, he gets up and he's just shouting. I think it's at Kyogo, and he's shouting like this, just go, just go. I think he was, like, itching. I wasn't in the stadium, so it's hard to say who it was, but he's itching to release someone, and it's not quite came off. Outside of that, you did feel that they were quite telepathic. There was a good kind of reading between them. They knew where to be. They knew when to press. They knew when to kind of, link up and all the rest of it. But like you say, it could have been 3 or 4. If somebody makes that run for Kuhn to split the defence again, if Maeda takes 1 or 2 of those chances, it could have been much more formidable. And Kuhn takes all the highlights, all the plaudits out the front 3, of course. I do think the energy and the endeavour of Dyson and Kyogo is definitely a big part of what put the fear into Leipzig and what really stopped them from coming out and doing anything, because they didn't, like I mentioned before, they had very little pace, they had very little X factor in their team. And when you've got that threat of what we've got, then you're good football players that are just like good players, but they're not rapid or they're not that tricky. Gives them a lot more reason to hesitate. And then, it stops them getting up the pitches quickly. Maybe we can turn it over. And I think, like, it's the non-statistical element of the game, Kyogo and Dyson were a big part of.
Yeah, definitely. Dyson, particularly for that second goal, him and Kyogo just hassled the Leipzig defence. I think Kyogo particularly ran himself into the ground. You could see it when he came off. The boy was absolutely exhausted. Dyson Maeda with that chance. The Dyson Maeda of Saturday League Cup semi-final against Aberdeen probably shows a bit more composure and scores. But for all his faults in terms of his composure in front of goal, he certainly makes up for it in the effort and the endeavour he puts in the press and in his run. As Brendan Rodgers says, there's no one like him in world football who can press the way he does. He's terrific in that. The front 3, the dynamism they have together is brilliant. I mean, last season Celtic struggled for a really first choice front 3. There was times where it was Palma who was a key starter. Towards the end of the season, it was Forrest. Kuhn had a period. Yang was starting at certain junctures as well. But this year, it seems like it's back to the days of when it was Abada, Kyogo and Jota, where it is, that's your first choice of Kuhn, Maeda and Kyogo. And there's no real debate about that for me. Sometimes Adam Dick can come in here and there, but I think that's the first choice front 3. Particularly these games in Europe, games against Rangers, games at Hampden, they are the big game guys who consistently are turning up for Celtic at the minute.
Yeah, big time. I think just looking at the team performances, the only kind of substitute we've not really... there's maybe 2. Scales comes on with 15 minutes to go for Cameron Carter-Vickers, which, like we mentioned before, Trusty's maybe stole the first team shirt off them a little bit. He's just got that little bit better balance next to Vickers, bit of pace and He's got that kind of same desire and will put his
Yeah.
body on the line, Scales style, which is great for us, obviously. But Scales comes into this game out of the cold and doesn't really put a foot wrong, which is great for him. And one thing I wanted to say on this note, just to get your thoughts and feelings, away to Kilmarnock Classic pitch at the weekend, is it maybe trusty Scales?
It could be, perhaps, yeah. Carter Vickers come off. I seen a picture after the third goal went in last night, and Carter Vickers is lying on the floor, feeling touching his feet, lying on the floor. That sit down players do. And then he came off not long after it for Scales. So yeah, you could see Scales' trusty partnership returning at the weekend. It wouldn't surprise me. We know Rodgers was reluctant to play Carter Vickers on some plastic pitches last season, I believe. So yeah, that maybe could be something you see at the weekend, and I wouldn't be surprised to see that.
I think that's a great microcosm of what we've got in a lot of these different positions, especially with the forwards and maybe the left back. But it's a great maturity you see in the team, you see in the squad now, where, like you see with the top Premier League teams, the top teams that operate in European football, is it's not about a best 11, it's about your best 18, your best 16, and there is no real first choice. It's who's the fittest, who's the best suited for the game. And Scales, again, credit to him, can come off the bench and not look out of place and can just pick up where he left off, in essence. And, 3 centre-backs of this standard is fantastic to have at our disposal. The other substitute, of course, is Adamida, who, I don't think he really got really much to do, did he?
Yeah. He didn't have much to do, to be honest. He just shut down a couple of balls, etc. And he had one moment where he could have held it up better, and he had a bad touch, and then he kind of realised he had a bad touch and ran and showed the desire to kind of win it back off the RB Leipzig player when they were looking to get forward. But other than that, he didn't really do much. He has a decent goal scoring record this campaign, but he's not really set the header I like, to be honest. Perhaps looking for a bit more from him at certain times, but that'll come when he gets more minutes. Right now, it's Kyogo who's starting, and there's a reason Kyogo's playing these types of games. There's games for Adamida, like Atalanta away, where he will come into the team. Maybe we see that down at Aston Villa when it's going to be physical against a team like them. But he does show what he can do last season. I've no doubt he will come into form at a certain point in this season.
Yeah, I think so too. I think his time will come. Maybe away to Kilmarnock could be a good game for him to start.
Yeah.
With a lot of proper minute management that over the last few weeks, it feels like we've got a real peak performance out of a lot of these players, because Taylor gets 90 against Dundee, 30 against Aberdeen or thereabouts, and then can come in to start this game and give us that shift and that inverted fullback. McGregor, quite similarly, is kind of fit and back in training, same as Vickers, but we very carefully take them from the shallow end to the deep end again. We use the squad. We're not really dropping down the level by playing, Bernardo and Engels or McKeown and Engels or that kind of thing, or trusty Scales. So, yeah, I think it's a real maturity. Played like he's well rested, I would agree. Because again, I've been crying out for McGregor to do that kind of role that we've seen last night, and we've seen the team develop over the last few matches, and everyone keeps telling me he's too old for that. He can't do it. He can't run. It's like he's only 31. Yeah, he's a professional footballer. He's not going to be Maeda or maybe even Hatate, but he does have the ability to go from box to box. He's very smart. He's very good. And that's where I think we get the best out of him. And maybe we need to manage his minutes a little bit better. Yeah, he's not got international stuff, so that does help. But coming back from a knock, previously McGregor has just been straight back in,
Yeah, but I think Brendan Rodgers deserves a lot of credit for the way the players' minutes have been managed over the past 3-4 games. This block Celtic have had, I think it's 4 games in 14 days since, or not even 14 days, it'll be less than that, since the Motherwell match. So, yeah, the manager deserves utmost credit for managing the players' minutes during that period. You've seen it with McGregor, particularly last night. Looked well rested, like the comment said, and put in a really top-level performance. Hatate as well has had his minutes managed. Even players like Nicolas Kuhn, not starting him against Dundee, not even playing him in the squad against Dundee, then comes into the semi-final to start at the weekend, does his bit, comes off as a sub, and then last night was terrific, unbelievable. So, yeah, I think the manager certainly deserves a lot of credit for the way he's managed this squad and the minutes of players over the past couple of games.
What do you think about this comment from the old Murphy Alexander here? Engels was an empty jersey. Bernardo did more in 20 minutes.
Nah, I don't see that.
So let's see Engels.
Yeah.
Fouled one, got a foul, blocked across, effective clearance, 32 passes, 11 of them in the final third. He had 4 missed passes, an interception, 3 duels won, 4 balls into the box, 4 of them attempted assists. And Bernardo, I'm giving him plaudits for last night. I think he did well, but no fouls, wasn't fouled, no tackles, no clearances, no blocks, no duels won, no interceptions, 18 passes, 6 of them in the final third, 2 of them missed. And he took a few corners, 5 of them, only 1 of them resulted in an attempted assist. So somebody got on the end of it. I don't know where you get that from, mate, really. To be honest with you, like, that's quite confusing.
Yeah,
maybe by the way, there's an argument for Scales did more, because Vickers has left the pitch with 46, where, no tackles, 5 duels, no interceptions. And Scales, 1 tackle, 3 duels, so pretty much the same, 1 interception. So there's maybe an argument for that, perhaps, but on what was actually completed in the game, but I don't see it from Engels.
I think the argument on Engels there probably refers back to my earlier point that it's very hard to judge players like him, box-to-box midfielders, because he's not consistently scoring goals. It's difficult to kind of judge them and see what they do that's effective in the game. But I thought he was good. Some really nice moments. He brings so much running power, dynamism, and a lot of really nice flicks around the corner for Kuhn, particularly the one for the goal. So, yeah, I don't think Engels was an empty jersey. I thought he played really well last night.
He has the assist for the first goal, the first goal.
Yeah,
and also, like again, like if I know you're watching again, I don't want to be disrespectful or anything, but like Engels was great at getting into those tight spaces and turning the ball back over. And like, yeah, he's not taking everyone on and dribbling up the pitch. He's had that nice pass for the assist, and he's maybe not had all the Hatate level passing, like splitting lines and getting into the box and things like that. But Engels and Bernardo now, we're going to see this more finally because of this midfield evolution I was just kind of chatting about with McGregor. But they're going to be a little bit more conservative. They're going to be a little bit, cautious. They're not going to be the Matt O'Reilly extra attacking midfielder in these types of games. They're going to be like an extra little pivot player to maybe allow McGregor or McKeown, depending on the opposition or whoever's playing, to go forward and charge up the pitch. Engels can do that, of course, but shoulder to shoulder, like Kevin Campbell, Haidara, Baumgartner, none of them were getting joy out of Engels. None of them were getting round him.
Yeah.
And yeah, so maybe it's a bit of that. Maybe it's just you've not seen him up there pressing and all the rest of it, the same as we have seen earlier in the Celtic career when he first joined. I get that, I suppose, but Engels is not a defensive mid, but he's definitely a bit of defensive cover, and we want McGregor to create. We want McGregor to go forth and influence the game. I did put a shout out, guys, for getting the likes up if we're going to do this live another time. But at 45, if we get to 67, I think I could talk Josh into doing this live again next week. So if you are enjoying the content here, especially with the live stream, smash the like button. Of course, if you've not already, hit subscribe. Quinny, can you confirm, did Engels play the role? So he did play number 6 quite a bit, but Augsburg played a bit more of a diamond kind of midfield. Sometimes he'd be right of the 3. He played attacking mid like twice, and I think a lot of people got that into their head that he's an attacking mid and done some stuff. I can go pull it up if you really want to see it, but he's definitely not an attacking midfielder as such. He's much more box to box, middle of the pitch.
Yeah, Engels, good last night, to be honest. I think he brings that versatility in the middle of the park, which is good. You look at when he came in, he's obviously replacing Matt O'Reilly quite clearly, but in a game like last night, he showed that that's just not what he can do. He can do other things in that midfield as well, and he showed that as well at Aberdeen at the weekend. So yeah, I think he's been an effective addition to this team so far, and a very versatile young player in that midfield who's only going to get better.
So this is displayed as being right mid, but as you can see, it's right of a diamond. He's not the attacking mid, he's not the defensive mid, he's maybe a bit more of one of the workhorses, as it were. So that's displayed as right mid. You see there's a few right mids here. Here's a centre mid against Hoffenheim. And again, where do we see him? Yeah, right of a 3. So like that's kind of what he is. He's box to box. Maybe not on the defensive side. He's not an out and out defender, but he's definitely not an out and out attacker in that regard as well. Left defensive mid here from a start. Again, it's the same kind of shape, isn't it? But this time on the left to maybe accommodate someone else. So I think like there was like, yeah, it was like his last game for Augsburg. He played an attacking mid. And I think we've seen this, and this is when they're trying to get 13 million out of us. So
yeah.
We've been a wee bit of skullduggery from Augsburg in that regard, to try to trick us into thinking something. But generally speaking, like, yeah, this is where he's been. Even 3 games here at right back, one of them against Bayern Munich. Would you believe? So yeah, I don't know if I'd say he's a number 6. I'd say he's like somewhere between a 6 and an 8.
Yeah, I think he showed that so far. He's definitely not an advanced 10 like Matt O'Reilly was, playing that role, but he's shown what he can do. I think he's shown that in spades. Tate was probably definitely more advanced than him last night, and he showed how effective he can be in that role. But for Celtic as a whole, the European scene's looking good, and last 16 playoff qualification is looking good.
It is indeed. Now, I did my prediction for the Champions League group stage when it was drawn here on the channel.
Yeah.
And I had us at the halfway point on 4 points. We're now on 7. I thought we would draw against Leipzig when the fixtures came out. I thought, we'll beat Bratislava. Dortmund, we might lose, but it might be quite, like we might some valor in it. And I thought Atalanta would have rinsed us when the draw was made, to be honest with you. And then maybe at home against Leipzig, you get the draw. So I think we can certainly start to think of it. The problem is, right, with these easier games, right? It's a different game state, it's a different opponent, it's a different challenge at hand. Young Boys of Bern, I know they're sucking ass here, but there was a game they played that they weren't actually that.
Yeah, it was the Inter game. It was, they beat 1-0 last minute goal. Yeah, they were unlucky there.
Yeah, so not to be totally written off. In Club Brugge last year, was it, or the year before, they qualified from a 4-team group, like what we've struggled to do, but they won it, and their group was quite difficult. I can't remember the ins and outs of it all. So not to be taken lightly. And Zagreb are up there with us somewhere. Yeah, shoulder to shoulder with us at the moment. So again, not to be taken too lightly. I think that this is where the competition starts for us now. We've put the headline on the show like history in the making potentially, but if we can get the points expected from these games, which is 3 wins, that's what we do expect. That's what we expected when the draw was made. And with the form that we've shown to this point, our expectations and our confidence are for victories for these games. Then really anything's possible. We could be jumping right into this top 8, maybe top 10 if we're unlucky. And, looking at home draws, looking at jumping through a qualifying round, or jumping through a round into the 16 rather than the qualifying round, as it were. And one of the interesting things about this, Josh, right, is we've got 2 games in the group after Christmas. I think it's Young Boys and Villa.
Yep.
And then after that, we'll have another 2 games if we qualify, which it looks like we probably will in some way, shape, or form. That's 4 games after, here's the punchline, and here's what we'll go to next, the January transfer window. We've spoken about left backs a little bit already. Everyone is talking about wingers at the moment, that behind Kun, Maeda, we don't really have much to really rely upon. Maybe Yang has given a wee bit of food for thought into that, but I don't think it's really changed the situation too much. Do we spend big money in January? Does Brendan phone up the boys a day and go, look at look at what I've done with that £13 million centre mid and that £6 million centre back? Go and get me a £20 million forward.
I don't think we'll spend £20 million. I think that's perhaps a wee bit unrealistic, but I think if you're looking at positions to strengthen the January window very briefly, winger is definitely one. I think you need 1 or 2 wingers, and then need to have a look at the left back situation, see what that's happening with Alex Valle, the Greg Taylor contract. So I think that's kind of the positions you'll need to strengthen. But I think Rodgers, given how well he's done in the Champions League so far, certainly has a case where if this is how well I'm doing with the current squad, and you back to me in the summer, how well can I do now after January if you back me again? Like, we look at this opportunity Celtic have. You don't know next year in the league phase if Celtic qualify. You might get a very tough draw. The draw this year, I would argue, has been quite favourable to Celtic, especially given the next 3 fixtures that are upcoming. So you've got a case that this could be one of our, well, it's the only time Celtic have got to, if it happens, the last 16, or got a chance to get to the last 16 the past 12, 13 years. So you need to make the most of it. And by making the most of it, that means strengthening the squad, upgrading a player like Luis Palma into a £6-7 million winger who can come into these games when Kun comes off, or Maeda comes off, and there isn't much of a drop-off in level. Same with the left-back situation. If Alex Valle is no longer at the club, you sign someone, Greg Taylor perhaps has to come off, there's not going to be much of a drop-off in level. So January is a big opportunity, and it's even more of a big opportunity given the way the Champions League is scheduled. Yeah,
I think so. And it'll be very interesting to see what kind of business we do, because you can guarantee them you're going to play 2 games in the Champions League in the group stage anyway, and then hey, we can begin to dream. Anything could happen really at this stage, because I'm sure that you're still going to get the cream of the crop, the creme de la creme of the Champions League still progressing, and still ultimately will probably go the furthest in the competition. But like we've seen time and time again, there's always a story in the Champions League of a team that, maybe punches above their weight a little bit. Maybe the draw is a little bit fortunate to them and all the rest of it. And again, really anything's possible at this stage. It's the way we've got to be thinking of it, because we're through the hardest segment. The first half of this competition was always going to be the marathon, was always going to be the gut buster, as it were. and we've came through it with, and goal difference is back to 0, which is absolutely fantastic. We're not being, we can forget about Dortmund now. We never need to bring it up. We never need to reference it. We can just pretend it didn't happen almost. We're not carrying any sins from it. We're not being held back by the goal difference or anything anymore. Never mind the loss of points, which I think no one had us getting anyway in the first place. So yeah, really excited. It's going to be onwards and upwards from here. And sadly, after the Kilmarnock game at the weekend, we've got a fucking international break again, which, wouldn't you just know it?
Yeah, no, it's typical, but it could perhaps be coming at the perfect time for Celtic, given also the number of games they've had over the past couple of weeks. To get that kind of rest for the boys who aren't going away could be good, and then recharge ahead of that. Because I think after Kelly away, after the international break, it's Hearts away, then Bruges at home in the space of 4 or 5 days. So it's another busy period when they come back, so they could need this rest over the next couple of weeks. And we'll see how Scotland do as well over the international break.
Of course. Look forward to the Kilmarnock game. We'll be back on the channel in a day or two probably to preview that, do predicted 11s and all the rest of it. I do expect a couple of changes. I think 3 is at least on the cards here, maybe 4. But yeah, we'll be back to preview that. And stay tuned to the channel, because I'll have a breakdown on the tactics board of the match, all the stuff me and Josh have been talking about, but just a bit more visual perhaps. And I thought Josh did a great job as well in the preview with the Leipzig guy we were interviewing. If you didn't check that out, make sure not to miss it, especially if you're just basking on all this Celtic glory today. There's plenty of content going around. And
yeah, we'll have someone on for Bruges. I'll try to get a hold of someone. We've been doing it for every game so far this season, so if you're enjoying those interviews, we'll be keeping them going throughout the rest of the league phase. So hopefully find someone involved with Club Bruges that we can speak to about them ahead of the game in a couple of weeks. Yeah,
over 150 of you joining us live on YouTube, which is absolutely fantastic. Please do smash the like button. If we do get to that magic number 67, me and Josh will be back to do this live with you next week. But I think, and again, if you've watched this after we've been live, your likes count as well. Smash the like button, of course. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. And yeah, there's still Champions League football on tonight, so maybe we'll do some scouting, watch some of the opposition. Bruges are playing Villa, I think.
Villa, actually. Yeah. Perfect game to tune into, 5:45.
Yeah, but a wee bit of 2 birds with 1 stone, and we'll see how everyone else does shake out. But Josh, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you very much for today. After obviously perfect time to come on after last night. Not any better.
That's it. And yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. Hail, hail, on the hoops.